Well, here we are. We are at the Empire State Aerosciences Museum, and right here is where it all started. In 1946, General Electric had their flight test center, and this is we're at the Schenectady Airport. And where we are at right now is we are at the Air Museum, and this is an amazing place to come. There's a wonderful museum. There's all kinds of planes out there, but we're here today especially to find out how they're reconstructing the Concorde, because this is their new exhibit, and that's going to be out in front. So I'm Ann Perillo, and you're watching Schenectady Today on the road, and we are now at the Empire State Aerosciences Museum. So come along with me and see what else is here. Okay, I'm here, and this is an amazing museum. I know I've said it before, but I really mean it. It's wonderful.
Thanks.
And we've got the door here, but I have Kevin with me, as we've introduced him before. But Kevin, what would we see in this museum?
You'll see a tremendous amount of exhibits. These are really spectacular exhibits. Out here, some of the key exhibits we have is a 1916 French Newport 17 fighter.
Oh, I remember when you were putting that together.
Yes, and then the Zonta Club of Schenectady helped acquired a replica of a Lockheed Electra. It was in the movie, the 1995 movie Amelia Earhart, The Final Flight. Which
this is a replica.
Replicated.
Because we don't know where her plane is, right?
Yeah, apparently it's off Gardner Island in the South Pacific.
I think they did figure that out.
Yes, and then the other large exhibits we have there, you'll see, is our oldest plane is a 1910 Curtiss Pusher, a few years after the Wright brothers, for the Glenn Curtiss built.
Was that a biplane?
It was.
Okay.
Very, just like the original Wright
Yeah.
Flyer kind of. And then our oldest exhibit is an 1898 Chinook glider, which is just in the back of us, hanging from the ceiling, which we rescued from a garage in Amsterdam,
Get out.
New York, yeah, and then they donated to the museum.
I mean, who keeps an airplane in their garage?
Well, apparently it's still in Amsterdam.
I guess
Got
I
an
did.
1898 Chinook glider built by Octave Chinook, who was one of the, just before the Wright brothers. He consulted with the Wright brothers.
Now, Chinook, would this be the Chinook Flyers from the same family, I wonder?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that was during World War II.
World War One. He started.
Yeah, but World War II, there were the Chinook Flyers that went.
I think it was named after Octave Chinook, yeah.
Okay,
the
yeah.
Chinook Air Force Base
Yeah.
in Illinois as
Right,
well.
right.
So it's pretty
Excuse us while we
No, it's a
commiserate here.
spectacular exhibit, and
Yeah.
there's much more out there, interactive exhibits, and we're currently renovating the hangar and hope to do a larger effort. This is a 70-year-old building, so we have a lot of constraints on the maintenance of it. So
But wait a minute, I found out that a company can adopt a plane.
Yes.
What is that?
Well, Gary Davis and Rich Benevue, who spearhead our restoration work group, have designed this wonderful program to get the public more involved. So we have the Adopt a Plane program, which I'm happy to participate in.
You don't have to take it home, though.
No. What you would commit to doing is helping us wash the planes out there and then paint them as well. They have to be
When they need it.
Yes, and it's one of our greatest assets in the museum is the Alto Air Park. We have 20 really historic military jet, largely fighter attack aircraft and a helicopter.
And those are outside, a lot of them, so they do get weathered.
Yes, they're outside full-time, and then so they require quite a bit of attention because we want them obviously in good shape. They're one of our biggest assets. So Gary Davis and Rich Benevue are spearheading that, and they've already got, I think probably about half the planes are already adopted now.
Well, now, how would a company that's watching this right now, what would they do to go ahead and adopt a plane?
I would recommend checking on our website. Of course, we have a full description of the program, or calling the museum and Gary for more information on it. Before you go, I'll give you we have a.
I don't know if I can adopt one, but
we have a packet of information that describes. It's a small commitment, but it's a great commitment to us. It's a great help to us.
Do they get their name kind of
They
like
do.
in front that says, this is my company?
Absolutely, yeah. Gary and Rich will also arrange for the folks who do it. We have signs.
Get a little credit for it.
We do. We have signs out there now which describe the aircraft, and then attached to that sign will be will identify and thank the folks that contribute to its restoration.
And it's revolving, so they could do it one year after the other, or another company could take over if they couldn't
and besides
make
that,
it.
it's just fun. I mean,
It's just
we're also
fun.
get to work on everything from a
And say, I have adopted a
an
plane.
F-14 Tomcat, or
Wow.
Gary and I are going to be working on the T-2 Buckeye, which is a Navy jet trainer.
You do so much here. It's amazing when I saw the replica of the Concorde. That's an amazing
It is.
accomplishment to get that from Times Square.
Yeah, and we have a great cadre of volunteers.
I met a number of them, and they're
Yeah.
wonderful, and they're dedicated.
Yes.
How much do they get paid for doing this?
We've doubled their salaries from 0 to 0, I guess, huh? But besides that, you know, our vice president, Peter Russo.
And he's right here,
He's right
actually.
here.
Heck, Peter, come on over and say hi.
Yeah,
Come on.
Peter is spearheading an effort with us to develop a program for renovating the entire hangar.
Peter Russo, tell our viewers a little bit about what you're doing here.
Well, we're trying to work with the county to rehab the main hangar, which you saw when we first entered Gallery 2. It was built by GE way back in 1945,
45.
and it was opened in 46. But some interesting facts of the history of it is that when they had the grand opening, and Mr. Wilson was president of GE, Stuart Symington came up, who was then like a secretary of the
He was secretary of the Army Air Force.
Army Air Force,
Symington,
right?
okay.
Yeah. And he mailed a letter to the president, and this was the very first airmail.
Oh my gosh.
The very first airmail left this airport and flew to D.C.
I'll be darned. And interesting, I was at the post office, and now they have an airmail stamp that you can buy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it just came out, so that's kind of
Oh,
cool.
wow.
Yeah.
But
With a
there's
little
a lot
airplane.
of history here,
Yeah.
you know? And we can go on and on about the stories of what happened here, but
Oh, I'm sure there's so many backstories associated with so many of the planes that you received or purchased. However you got them here,
Right.
that's all. And the amazing thing is that when they get these planes, suppose it comes from, we'll say Nebraska. This has to be taken apart and then
put together.
put together.
Yeah.
Amazing. And how do they transport it? On trains or?
Barges.
Barges. Yeah, because
Well-
one just recently came in on a barge, didn't it?
Yeah.
A couple
Well,
years ago.
We had
Well, we
three of them. We opened up the,
Three of them,
with
yeah.
Brian Stratton, you remember,
Yeah.
on the Canal Commission then.
Right.
And we opened up the state canal system this time of the year.
I
It was
remember
about
that.
7 years
I think
ago.
I still have the photos.
Yeah, and we transited 3 jets through the locks at Waterford, then brought them up to the Mohawk River Dimension fabricators who helped us. And then at 1 o'clock in the morning, we towed them up here to the airport.
Right.
So it's pretty,
What an exciting place to work.
yeah.
Or not work, or volunteer, I should say.
Volunteer.
Volunteer, because I understand volunteering.
It's not work
No.
when you're doing what you want to do.
Exactly. And who's your president? You're the vice president, right?
Yeah. Bud Matthews is our current
Okay,
president.
we want to give him a little shout
Oh,
out too,
yeah,
because
Bud
the
does
president does a lot of work.
Yeah.
And we have 2 other gentlemen here, and you've already met Dan Wilson, and come on over here. Yeah.
Gary?
Gary's here. Gary, what are you doing here?
At the present time, I'm a volunteer member of the restoration crew. What we do over in the restoration hangar is we refabricate parts of an aircraft. If we get an aircraft in and say part of one of the plates is rusted or rotted out, what we do is we take that plate off and then refabricate that section and put it back on. The restoration crew is all volunteers. It's not a job, it's a love affair for us. And quite a few of us on the restoration crew are veterans. So for us, it's a labor of love. We love what we're doing, and we need volunteers.
Well, let's
If you have-
get people to come out there and volunteer.
If you have some free
Men
time.
and women, right?
Yes. There's nowhere else you can come out and actually put your hands on a jet or a helicopter and have so much fun. So we need volunteers, but we invite people to come up to the museum and see how things are going. The Concorde is another aircraft that we just got in. We are right now we're sanding it, getting it ready to power wash, and once we get all 3 sections together, it will be out front. That's where the reassembly will be. That's where we put the wings back on. There will be body work, fabrication work that will have to be done. And again, if you're in the area and you drive by ESAM, stop in and see us, and you'll actually get to see the Concorde being reassembled, which is something you won't see anywhere else.
No, and it's only going to be temporary because pretty much it'll be done and that'll be the end of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's an amazing, this is an amazing place, and I think that most of you, and I know that my videographer right here had never been here, so we're showing him the place as well. So I think you're a big secret.
Well, we are. We always, we're a nonprofit organization, so, but I think, thanks to Peter and Gary and Dan.
Dan, come on over, at
we've
least
done
get the picture here.
Much more advertising and developing events for the public and, families. So you're right, it is a very unique place.
And if you've just tuned in, Dan here is the gentleman that took it apart down at Times Square, or that area anyway.
We took it apart in
Island?
Garden City, Long Island,
Long
at
Island.
the Cradle of Aviation.
Yeah.
They wanted to put the plane up like we did, but they couldn't get the budgeting or permission from the town because there was a lot of infrastructure in the way. New York City,
Hey, we bailed them out, right?
And you talk about secrets. This museum has a potential to be in one of the best because it's one of the few that have actually on a runway.
Yeah.
Like Garden City, they have no runway. It was an old Air Force base. The city put buildings up and down the runway. You could no longer land a plane there.
Well, the amazing thing is that when we were here, and I just walked in, and Kevin says, well, there goes one of the planes, the
C-17.
transport plane.
Yeah,
And what
C-17.
plane was it that went out?
That was a
C-
C-17
C-17, okay.
that flew up from Stewart Air Base in New York, from the 105th Airlift Wing. They provide supplies to the resident 109th Airlift Wing for their C-130s that take to Greenland.
Well, this is an amazing place, so let's see what else we can find here.
Okay.
Hi, I'm here with John Colwaite, and they have a new exhibit that they're working on, and I'm going to let John tell you about that.
Well, we have an exhibit about World War II, and we're concentrating on stories about New York State veterans exclusively. And this is a gun turret similar to one in a B-25, and this is a fuselage section of a B-25. And this gunner achieved ace status by shooting 5 enemy planes, which was really extraordinary. But we'll have stories like this, compelling stories about individuals through the whole exhibit. We have stories like this this is Clarence Dart. He was from Elmira, New York. He flew with the Tuskegee Airmen. And this wall will be covered with similar stories. They're all going to have a compelling quote. So we grab the attention of the visitors and tell a little story about them. And they will be able to go to a website and learn a much bigger story about everybody. These cases behind you here will have bomb sites and a scene of a airplane using that bomb site. We have an American one, and this will be a very rare German bomb site that used a computer to fly the plane through a dive and release the bomb. So this is a very rare, and this will be unique to this museum, I think. And we have airplanes from the war, from both sides, to an interactive exhibit that will identify those planes. On the walls are 1,000 bombers around the wall. And that was, there were several 1,000 bomber raids which involved very sophisticated coordination to get all those planes from dozens of air bases in England, all organized to go on the mission. But that's what 1,000 bombers looks like. And we'll have artifacts. We have a piece of shrapnel that was retrieved from a bomber by a New York State guy. We'll have an oxygen tank from a plane that crashed in Vermont with some New York State air vets on it, and many stories. 21 people we're going to tell the story, and it's an ongoing exhibit. We'll be adding these stories of these New York State veterans. Like this guy from Frankfurt, New York, who was stranded on the Greenland ice cap for 129 days. Very unusual stories. You don't normally think about the war involving Iceland and airplanes flying over the glaciers. And they were rescued by a seaplane, the first time seaplanes were used on the ice. This is a gun turret, the typical gun turret that would be mounted on a bomber. And kids will be able to get in here and experience what it was like to sit in that and have enemy aircraft coming at them. These controls that make the turret go left and right and the guns up and down are very similar to what gaming controls are today. So this is, 75 years ago, and the technology is similar to what we experience today.
Okay, we're at the Aerosciences Museum, and a plane just took off over here, so we got a little noise behind us. But behind me, I have the vertical stabilizer for the, it's a smaller version of the Concorde, and I'm going to let Kevin Millington tell you about this.
Well, thanks, Ann. Yes, as Ann said, this is the we've acquired the largest model airplane in the world. It's a 1/2 scale replica of the Concorde, the supersonic transport, which first flew in the early 70s and retired about 15 years ago. But it's at a 1/2 scale. The model here is 25,000 pounds, and is 100 feet long. We acquired it from the Cradle of Aviation Museum in Long Island. And previous to that, British Airways had it mounted on a building in Times Square as an advertisement. So our volunteers have disassembled it. It's in about 12 pieces. Behind me is the vertical stabilizer and rudder. And our game plan is to reassemble it and then place it on a pylon out in front of the airport, in front of our museum. So it's a colossal project, but it'll sure be an eye catcher. Okay, well the Concorde, the real Concorde, was a spectacular aircraft. It was a consortium designed it and built it of Great Britain and France. It was designed in the late 50s and 60s. It started flying operationally in the early 70s and flew until about 2002. 13 were manufactured, used by British Airways and Air France. And not only was the Concorde supersonic, but it was capable of flying twice the speed of sound, or Mach 2. And it was an engineering marvel. It had 4 huge afterburning jet engines. It had a capacity of only about 125 passengers. And it was largely confined, never a commercial success, due to the regulations that were enacted in 1971 preventing sonic booms over American cities, and at the same time the oil crisis and then more economical passenger planes coming into service. So as a result, it was never a financial success, and were confined largely to transatlantic routes instead of transcontinental routes. But it was a spectacular plane, very sleek, aerodynamic, small delta wing area, which necessitated extremely high takeoff and long takeoff runs. So the landing gear, I think, and the braking system on the plane were a work of art. And one of the most unique design aspects of the Concorde was its nose section where the 2 pilots and flight engineer sat. And when the Concorde landed and taking off, it had high angle of attack, taking off, and landing, necessitating the nose section would pivot down on landing to allow both of the pilots to be able to get a good visual on their approach to the airport. So it was a engineering marvel. Suffered a tragic accident, I think, at de Gaulle Airport in 2002, I believe, when on a takeoff run, a tire exploded, shooting metal into the wing area. It caused a a huge fire, the fuel tanks erupted, and I think about 120 folks all perished in it. Shortly after that, it was removed from service. If you ever want to see a real one, I think the nearest one is probably at the Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum in New York City, where it sits alongside the Intrepid on the pier.
Okay. Well, here we are. We're still at the Aerosciences Museum, the Empire State Aerosciences Museum. They're located on Route 50, and it's down Rudy Chase Drive. It's there's a traffic light. You can't miss it. Come on in and check it out. But right now, we're privileged to be in the restoration room, and who knew? I mean, they have to restore these plates. So I've got Gary Davis. Come on, Gary. Come on over here. Gary is one of the restoration experts, and I'm gonna get out of here and let you explain what we're looking at here.
Okay.
I'm out of here.
What we have here is it's a nose cone section of a C-130. This was approximately built, I would say, in the late 40s, early 50s. What we're doing here is we're actually in the restoration process. Our nose cone was up in one of the fields up here behind, and it had sat up there for quite some years, and it became a home for some raccoons, some mice, a lot of birds, bees, so on and so forth. So what we thought one day was, because it is so close to the 109th Air Wing over here on the other side of the runway, that we should bring it down and restore it and make it a showpiece of the museum here. So what we did was we brought this down with a wrecker. When we got it, it was a disaster. There had to have been hundreds, almost thousands of miles of wire that was in here hanging down. So what we did was we stripped out all the wire. Some of the windows that were in the front were banged up, cracked, broken. So we have taken them out, and that's part of our restoration process. And what we're doing is we want to make this part of our museum here. We're going to make it accessible for kids. We want to put in, we have 2 seats that are going. We're going to have a yoke. We're going to have throttle controls. In the front, where those windows were, we're going to have a projection screen of an aircraft actually flying, and we will have hydraulics hooked up to the nose cone, where that when kids are sitting in it in the pilot seat and waiting, the hydraulics will move the nose cone back and forth so that the kids will actually get the feeling that they're flying. And we have a lot more information going on with our nose cone here, but this has really come a long way from what we had, and when it's finished, it's going to really look nice. Okay, this is the front of our nose cone that we're working on. As you can see, there's a lot of restoration work going on with it. We've taken windows out. There's a lot of body work, restoration that has to be redone. We will be redoing that. In the front here, as I said before, it's where we will have a projection screen so that the kids will actually be able to sit in the cockpit, run the throttle controls, and when the hydraulics are hooked up, it will move back and forth so the kids will actually get the feeling that they're flying. And we also are going to have CDs to run in it, which is we recorded, which are actually engine sounds from a C-130 and also a B-25 that are in idling, and then also in forward thrust and taking off. So it's just one of the bigger parts that we're doing here to make this look as close to as possible as we possibly can. This nose cone here was actually part of the Coast Guard at one point. On the top and on the side, you can see the orange color. That was the Coast Guard colors. So now we have it here, and we're going to redo it, make it a permanent part of our restoration process. So if you get the chance to come up to ESAM, it will be well worth a visit. We're doing new things here all the time, and we would love to see you. So come up and see us.